Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. The five biggest banks, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Barclays, the Royal Bank of Scotland, and UBS have all pleaded guilty to multiple crimes involving foreign currencies, interest rates, and collusion. The traders, according to the New York Times, had formed a quote, an invitation-only club where the stakes were so high that newcomers were warned, mess this up and sleep with one eye open, unquote. The pleas are expected to be heard this afternoon in federal court. Joining us now from Sag Harbor, New York, to discuss all of this is James S. Henry. James is a leading economist, attorney, and investigative journalist. Thank you so much for joining us today, James.
You're very welcome.
James, so let's start off, and can you explain to us exactly what these banks were involved in?
They set up a cartel to rig one of the largest financial markets in the world, the $5.3 trillion per day foreign exchange market. And most of them are also involved in rigging what's called the LIBOR interest rate market as well, which
Explain
is
that,
of fundamental importance for all kinds of interest rate markets all over the world.
Explain the LIBOR scandal.
Well, the LIBOR scandal was very similar to the Forex scandal. You had traders who were involved in colluding on pricing financial securities and agreeing on what interest rates they would bid on the part of their banks rather than compete on an arm's length basis. So this is a clear-cut case of where the invisible hand was nowhere to be seen. These are critical markets for all kinds of corporate investors, financial investors of all kinds, housing markets. It's trade. Anyone involved in international trade. This is absolutely outrageous, and it's an example of really bad behavior by essentially a cartel of very large institutions that have been behaving as if they are too big to jail, too big to penalize.
Now, explain further in terms of what this, pleading guilty actually means, and what is expected in terms of the next steps in this
Well, they've agreed under this settlement to pay $5.89 billion in fines and disgorgement of profit. But they've also, the five institutions here, four of them have pleaded guilty, which is a corporate plea submission. And that's really unusual. The problem is that in advance of this settlement, essentially the collateral consequences that would have applied to a guilty plea by a corporate institution, such as losing the right to be a prime dealer for Federal Reserve securities, or losing other rights to represent state pension funds in the U.S. Pension fund system, those rights were all shielded, protected. So essentially, this is a plea that has been deprived of any collateral consequences. So we also see nobody going to jail here. The traders involved may have lost their jobs. But the profits from this activity were recorded by these banks years ago. And now finally, after 6 or 7 years, lots of litigation, they have finally come to this settlement. You have to ask whether the settlement has any real impact on their bottom lines. And I think the best answer to that is given by today's stock market price, which for this bank group as a whole, their market capitalization actually rose. In the case of UBS, the stock price rose 3%. In the case of Barclays, it rose 3.7%.
What's the calculation there? Why is that happening?
I think investors are looking at this as a light, as a kind of slap on the wrist. If you look at JP Morgan, for example, JP Morgan is being fined under this agreement about $1 billion, a little bit less than that, about $900 million. But J.P. Morgan in the first quarter of 2015, this largest U.S. bank had net income of $5.9 billion. On a year basis. I mean, if they describe this penalty as less than 3% of J.P. Morgan's net income last year, it would come off as a more realistic appraisal of how light the penalty is. And this is an important thing for us to look at. These 22 largest global banks in general, I have compiled a database of all the corporate crimes they've been fined or had to pay penalties for or settled private lawsuits for from 1998 to 2015. There's a grand total of 255 felony scale offenses, not only LIBOR rigging and currency markets, but money laundering, bribery, mortgage fraud, financial sanctions busting, wrongful foreclosures, total of 14 different offenses, and the grand total for this group of the largest 20 banks in the world, more than 650 such fines, for which they received a grand total of $246 billion of fines. But it hasn't affected their behavior.
And it'll continue to not affect their behavior unless key leaders of these organizations or banks are held accountable. Now, I know in other countries like Ireland actually took the bankers to court and convicted them. Why is that not happening here?
I think there's a mentality in the part of the Justice Department that they really can't hold senior bankers responsible. In the 1980s, under the first Bush administration, something like 880 bankers went to jail in the United States for the savings and loan crisis and the financial fraud that was committed there. Here we have banks that are engaged in much more damaging global activity, costing tens of billions of dollars to financial markets, and no one's going to jail. There may be jail for lower-level traders going forward, but none of the CEOs at these institutions have experienced any kind of penalties. In fact, their payment schedules are going up as the stock market increases. J.P. Morgan's stock price has appreciated 28% in the last year alone. So, the main point about this is that if you look at this strictly on a business basis, this is a very profitable kind of crime because the profits are all realized, 5 or 6 years ago, at least, from this kind of activity. It's been going on for a long time. And finally, after a lot of litigation and a lot of settlement negotiations, maybe 5 to 6 years after the fact, they finally have to pay a fine. So on a net present value basis, putting aside the ethics or the morality of this, it's been a profitable business for the banks, and there's no reason they shouldn't be expected to continue doing it.
And the Department of Justice here in this case, why haven't they moved more swiftly?
These are institutions that are not without influence in Washington. Eric Holder, if he goes back to Covington and Burling, joining Laney Breuer, who used to be head of the white-collar crimes unit of the Department of Justice. That's a big law firm at Covington. They represent all of these institutions. There's a tremendous amount of political influence on the part of the large institutions, and Jamie Dimon basically taunted Elizabeth Warren back in the fall, saying, go ahead and fine us. He's been complaining about being targeted by the regulators, but the history is that these banks have not changed their behavior, and these fines are just passed along to customers. They're not borne by the executives involved at all.
James, do you think Loretta Lynch, the new Department of Justice head, will have anything to add to this case and bring it to greater conclusion?
I think going forward, you'd like to believe that she would have a tougher stance toward the banks than her predecessor. But, she was deeply involved in the sort of slap on the wrist settlement with HSBC in 2012, which was, where HSBC was caught red-handed laundering billions for the cartels in Mexico, and also busting sanctions against U.S. Sanctions that have been imposed on countries like Iran and North Korea. So, the track record suggests that she will be as accommodating as her predecessors. But, that's not the way we're going to bring these. Essentially, banking has become a kind of criminal enterprise. And we're talking about multiple crimes over multiple years committed by the same institutions under the administration of the same senior executives. So it isn't a case of, one or two rogue traders or bad actors here. We have an institutional problem, a real culture of crime and opportunism within these financial institutions.
And in spite of what we have seen over the years since 2007 and 2008 crises, things really haven't changed. There has really been no reform of the system in any way.
Well, I think the banks are very busy right now trying to undermine the reforms that were made. There were some efforts on the part of Congress to, toughen up on bank regulation, to establish new bank regulators. But, right now they're spending a lot of money on lobbyists to undermine that and to roll it back. And I don't think there's much support for tougher regulation in Congress on the part of this Congress. So, I think the problem is that we're looking at a situation that hasn't fundamentally changed from the standpoint of tough penalties. But what you need to stop this kind of behavior is proactive regulation. This kind of ex post facto cleaning up after the fact takes years. It imposes fines that as a fraction of profits or cash flow are trivial. And, I think the behavior underlying it just goes on.
It appears that the bark of the banksters prevailed. James Henry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.
In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architectural and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built the temples, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans who spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankango and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early with the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors, who as part of their legacy laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in those forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, whose spirit and sacrifice. We ask these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the maroon-free communities. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We ask those Africans who went with Boukman, Dessalines, to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
In the words of Malamu Marcus Messiah Garvey, let no religious scruples, no political machinations divide us, but let us hold together under all climes and in every country, making among ourselves a racial empire upon which the sun shall never set. Your first allegiance shall be to your God, then to your family, race, and country. Dr. Ben Yakanan reminds us, though, that when your God and your Savior look like your master and enslaver, you become the principal agent in your destruction. So who is your God? We're not going to eliminate imperialism by just shouting at it. No, we're not. We must also be very careful that in strategizing, we do not make too much public, because that is how we are being thwarted. That is how we are being infiltrated. That is how we're being hijacked. Because in terms of strategy, we as a people, as a race, haven't yet, I think, mastered confidences, patience, like the Chinese did. Retire from the world and come forward. Conquering the world is an example that we need to look at. Ownership of businesses and spaces, and especially communication spaces, very important for us to continue to change the narrative about us, ourselves, our race. before we go any further, we recall and rememor the martyrs, those who fought and died, those who survived the Emancipation Wars of 1831-32.
Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory.
Pay tribute and honor our ancestors, those who were tried and sentenced for their role in the 1831-1832 Emancipation War in Jamaica, the parish of Westmoreland.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I could say all the things that I should say them loud, say them clear for the whole round world to hear.
Garrick from Belfast in St. James, sentenced to 259 lashes. David Gibson from Clifton, sentenced to death. John Gilling, owned by Mrs. Parcher, sentenced to 36 lashes. Ishmael, alias Billy Grant from Prospect, 100 lashes. James Green, Clifton, sentenced to death. Frederick Gray from Rose Hill, sentenced to 100 lashes. Sam Hilton from Lambs River, sentenced to 100 lashes. Philip Irving from McHale's Prospect, sentenced to 100 lashes.
William McIntosh from Belfontaine St. James, sentenced to 250 lashes. Duncan Mackenzie from Flower Hill, sentenced to be transported. William McKinley, owned by S. Whittingham, sentenced to death. Richard McLeod from McHale's Prospect, sentenced to death. James Miller, owned by Dr. Fuller, sentenced to 160 lashes. John Morris from Clifton, acquitted. Coffey, alias Richard Morrison, from Rock Pleasant, sentenced to be transported.
Richard Shelton from Duckett Spring and Lambs River, sentenced to 200 lashes. Premier, alias Richard Skelton from Coe Park, sentenced to be transported. John M. L. Stevens from Stevenage, sentenced to 200 lashes. George Tharp, owned by enslaver George Tharp, sentenced to 150 lashes. Titus, alias George Waite from Richmond, sentenced to death. George Watson from Horton Grove, sentenced to be transported.
Robert Whitehorn from Clontarf, sentenced to death. Edward Whittingham from Coe Park, sentenced to 200 lashes. Eliza Whittingham from Coe Park, sentenced to death. Jane Whittingham from Coe Park, sentenced to be hanged. S. Whittingham from Coe Park, sentenced to be transported. Robert Wigan from Lambs River, sentenced to be transported. Archie Wilson, owned by enslaver Archibald Wilson, sentenced to 150 lashes. John Wiley from Barnside, sentenced to be transported.
Robert Morris, owned by Mary Spence, Stewie, sentenced to death. George Murray from Clifton, sentenced to death. Edward Partner, owned by Isabella Partner, sentenced to death. Philip, owned by William Shellett, sentenced to 6 months imprisonment.
Southern trees, barren, strange fruit, blood on the leaves, and blood at the roots. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze.
Henry Cooper from Coe Park, sentenced to death. Henry Cowan from Argyle Pen, sentenced to death. Robert Davis from Sweet River, sentenced to be transported.
Thomas Davis from Enfield, sentenced to be transported. Matty, alias Richard Drackett, owned by Mary Torrent, acquitted. John Ellory, owned by a white sailor, sentenced 14 days imprisonment. Hugh Ferguson from Clifden, sentenced to death. William Ferguson from Clifden, acquitted. Jack, alias John Fleming, owned by Daniel McGibbon, sentenced to 50 lashes.
William Evans, alias Alexander Bentlos, from Welshpool Plantation, sentenced to death. William Brooks. Edward Barrett, from Duckett Spring and the Lambs River Plantation, sentenced to death. John Bull, owned by Edward J. Young, sentenced to death. John Campbell from Floor Hill, sentenced to 120 lashes. William Chambers, owned by Mary Gray, sentenced to death. David Clark, owned by a Mr. Young, sentenced to 120 lashes.
Samuel Jarrett from Crow Park, sentenced to death. Amelia Johnson, acquitted. Nelson Carr from Belfast St. James, sentenced to 250 lashes. Edward Lambden from Barneside, sentenced to death. Robert Lambert, owned by William Gillette, Esquire, sentenced to 39 lashes. John Linton from Heritage, sentenced to death. Joe Little from Welchpool, sentenced to be hanged but mercifully escaped.
James Reed from Hermitage, sentenced.
Hanged but mercifully escaped.
James Reed from Hermitage, sentenced to death. Thomas Reed from Lambs River, sentenced to 150 lashes. James Ricketts, owned by Edward J. Young, sentenced to death. Thomas Rook, McHale's Prospect, sentenced to 100 lashes. Samuel Sampson, owned by Mary Torrent, sentenced to 14 days imprisonment.
William Martin from Cow Park, sentenced to be transported. A.C. McHale from McHale's Prospect, sentenced to death. George McHale from McHale's Prospect, sentenced to 100 lashes. John McCallum from McHale's Prospect, sentenced to 60 lashes. Robert McGee from Cow Park, sentenced to 200 lashes. Alexander McGrother, owned by Mary Torrent, sentenced to 200 lashes. James McIntosh, owned by Amelia McIntosh, sentenced to 250 lashes. Richard, alias Richard McIntosh from Belfont in St. James, sentenced to 100 lashes.
Robert Allen, owned by enslaver Isabella Partner, sentenced to 4 dozen lashes. Jack Anderson, from the Retrieve Plantation, sentenced to death. John Appleton, from the Duckett Spring and Lambs River Plantation, sentenced to 100 lashes. David Atkinson, from Darlaston, sentenced to death. William Atkinson, Darlaston, sentenced to death. Fred, alias William Ball, owned by enslaver Mary Millin, sentenced to death. Daniel Barrijam, from Chillons, sentenced to death. Billy, alias William Binham, from Golden Spring, sentenced to death.
Blood on the leaves and blood at the roots. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze.
We remember and honor those who walked and worked before us and thus paved the path down which we now walk.
Hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South. Them big bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Scent of magnolia, clean and fresh. Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is trees of fruit, for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for the leaves to drop. Here is a strange and bitter crowd. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home and be free. Me hands holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say them loud, say them clear, for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree that every man should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things that I can do, though I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. Well, I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if out my heart I could fly. I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know, yeah. Not sing, 'cause I know, yeah. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know how it feels. I know how it feels to be free. Yeah, yeah, I know how it feels. Let's turn it on. I know how it feels. How it feels to be free.
Black power! 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 Black power!
In a little tent. Oh, and just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long. But I know change gon' come. Oh, yes it will.
Just paid tribute and continue to do that to those of our ancestors who fought and died in the Emancipation Wars of 1831-32. Call the Christmas Rebellion being celebrated or observed, commemorated today, the 184th anniversary of the Emancipation Wars, led by Sam Sharp. Sam Sharp and those who fought and died with him, largely responsible for bringing about the abolition of slavery, not only in Jamaica, but in the Caribbean. In the wake of the rebellion, the wars, let us call this the Emancipation Wars because that's what they are, 500 or more enslaved Africans, including Baba Sam Sharp, were executed. Also in the wake, a few years later, full emancipation, 1st of August, 1838. The promise of emancipation is not yet fully realized.
For centuries I've been trapped on this slave ship. My history, culture, and personality locked in its dungeon. They'll keep us of the dreams, cruel and barbaric. Whips, chains, and castrations are our daily diet. The whale cut through the piss and the shit as the vomit drip from chin to chin. It's easy to realize we might not see home again. Even the sun is unfriendly as the breezes turn cold. The women raped, the children starved, and no hope for the old. Ancestors, please help make the people free. They won't listen to me. I've been traveling through a hell not of my making. Now I speak many tongues, but my own has been chased away. Dressed in garments fit for clowns. I've got this passage to nowhere. Let it be said I will fight until I reach home again. But where that be? Hundreds of years gone. Where that be? Hundreds of years gone. Slave ship. Ancestors, please help make the people see. They won't listen to me. Ancestors, help me recoup what is mine. Give me strength for the last battle ahead. Give me the wisdom and the power to defeat the enemy. Let me drown this anti-African reality and find my way off this slave ship. I've been floating for centuries. Slave ship. Please help the people see. Ancestors, please help make the people see. They won't listen to me.
Mother, yes, you who have come before me, help make our families whole again. Help me use my mind to develop strong Watotos who will defend me against the rapes you knew. Let them protect me against the theft of my identity and consciousness. Let them swing the sword of the warrior and kiss with tenderness the frail tomorrows promised me long ago. Let them join their father and I in the eradication of our continued exploitation. But most of all, let them return me to my station, to my powerful throne. For I am Africa's daughter, trapped on this slave daughter, floating away on this slave ship. Ancestors, please help make the people see. They won't listen to me. Ancestors, please help we.
Where's my little black baby? Please help make the people see. Ancestors, please make the people see. They won't listen to me. No need for centuries. Another man would fit me in his majesty. My woman jumped over for me. Where's my little black Stop this misery. Ancestors, please help me. They won't listen to me. Slave ship. Slave ship. In this misery. Slave ship. Lonely fantasy.
Today marks 86 days since Franklin Johnston, one of the chief advisors to our ministry and Minister of Education, rubbished CARICOM's call for reparations, cites a young baby, quotes a baby, in saying that African people are responsible for their own enslavement, and he still remains an advisor today.
We are saying that those organizations which are politically on the front lines fighting for our people should come together and form a united front. This united front is a very simple thing now, a very simple task. All it means is that we come together and have common meetings. And if we hear one attacking the other newspaper, we don't respond to the newspaper, we telephone each other and ask them. And if we hear one attacking the other newspaper, we don't respond to the newspaper, we telephone each other and ask them. And if we hear one attacking the other newspaper, we don't respond to the newspaper, we telephone each other and ask them. And
as a people, out of the drum, we come. Hey. Out of the drum we come. Oh. As a people, out of the drum we come. No.
Jacob Caruthers,
out of the drum,
ancestor elder, says of Malcolm X, Malcolm was a prophet and champion of African independence, who realized that enslavement to the oppressor's ideas and ideals was more dangerous to Africans in the long run than was physical slavery of the chattel slave system. We could always discuss that. It is worth discussing. It is worth discussing among ourselves, even as we come together.
We come!
Whether enslavement to the oppressor's ideas and ideals is more dangerous to us as Africans in the long run than was physical slavery of the chattel slave system. Our elder ancestor Jacob H. Carruthers said so of Malcolm X. That this Malcolm X realized.
Respect yourself. The dance.
We want to throw in E. Franklin Frazier's discourse on the failure of the Negro intellectual.
Respect yourself.
He said the Negro intellectual, with exceptions,
Respect your elders here.
had failed to address the Negro tradition
Respect your elders.
because they were obsessed with integration and the approval of white intellectuals. In their condition of enslavement to the white intelligentsia, these Negro scholars had contributed no philosophy or theory to aid their people toward liberation. No, because they were enslaved to the white intelligentsia. We're saying that within the context of the Ministry of Education and Mr. Franklin Johnson. 86 days today since he wrote in one of our national newspapers that the CARICOM Reparations Commission, set up by the governments of the Caribbean, including the government to which he's employed, paid by us, of course, taxpayers' dollars. So I wonder how much. What is Mr. Franklin Johnson's salary as an advisor to the Minister of Education? 86 days today since he rubbished CARICOM's call for reparations. 86 days today since he thumbed his nose at black people in Jamaica, the masses of the people. 86 days today since he told us to get over it already, that is enslavement.
Everybody.
86 days today
Respect yourself.
since he told us that we were responsible for our own enslavement. That the thesis that he wanted to put forward, and which he did, and the theory which he wanted to build upon, was that black people sold black people into slavery, so get over it already. Now he advises the Minister of Education. He has influence on the curriculum. As we go into 2016, we're going to have to determine what is important, who is important, and there has to come a point in our lives as African people, in the so-called struggle that we seem to talk more about than to do anything about, where we say enough is enough, where we say this is it, we will take no more. And like Sam Sharp and those who fought and died with him during the Emancipation Wars, like Chief Taki, like Paul Bogo, the promise of emancipation is not yet fulfilled, because one of the tools of continued enslavement, it is a battle for the African mind, make no joke about it. And one of the tools of that is the African, the black-skinned person, intellectual and otherwise, who is now carrying out
of the drum we come.
The further process of enslavement, of neocolonialism,
we come.
Of ensuring that imperialism has a cushy place to grow.
As a people, out of the drum we come. No.
So it is a failure.
Out of the drum.
The failure of a Negro intellectual in their condition of enslavement to to white intelligentsia, that these Negro scholars continue to contribute nothing, no philosophy, no theory, to aid our people, to aid their people toward liberation.
Out of the drum.
As we go into 2016, we must make a determination. Dancing the dance of the elders. Let's take this from the top again, and when we come back, we move into another segment. But for now, let's take this from the top. This is the dance of the elders. As a people, we come.
Out of the drum we come. As a people, out of the drum, we come. Hey. Out of the drum we come. Oh. As a people, out of the drum we come. No. Out of the drum. Elder. Everybody dance. Respect yourself. The dance of the elder. Everybody dance. Respect yourself. Oh, out of the drum. Out of the drum, we come. As a people here. As a people. The dance of the elder. Everybody dance. Respect yourself. The dance of the elder. Everybody dance. Respect yourself. Everybody dance. Respect the elders here. Everybody dance. Respect your elders here. Drum we come. Out of the drum. Out of the drum we come. Yeah. Out of the drum. Yeah. That's of the elder. Everybody dance. Respect yourself. Everybody dance. Respect yourself.
Black power! 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 Black power!
Into the second day of Kwanzaa. Umoja was yesterday, unity. Today it's Kugichagulia, self-determination. Our focus today is the definition of ourselves, defining ourselves, naming ourselves, creating for ourselves, and speaking for ourselves. Kugichagulia, self-determination, determining who we are, what we are, why we are, and how we are. Defining ourselves, naming ourselves, creating for ourselves, and speaking for ourselves. Gotta determine what that means also to each of us individually. We must make that determination. What does it mean to define ourselves? How do we define ourselves? By whose standards do we define ourselves? What is our name? How do we name ourselves and our children? By whose standards? And it goes more than just a name that you give to yourself. But embodying in that naming process who we are, what our purpose is, creating for ourselves, creating industries, manufacturing, engaging in science and technology, being a part of the process. We talk about the convergence of the digital technologies. Where are we in that process? In creating for ourselves, freeing our African minds to create as we did in building the pyramids, in creating the very first civilization that the world has ever known, and speaking for ourselves.
Not only is God's work wonderful, God's work can never be undone.
Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, kole bajeo, kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, kole bajeo, kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, ohuna fifeshe kole daruo, ohuna fifeshe kole daruo, kole daruo, kole daruo, ohuna fifeshe kole daruo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, kole bajeo, kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo, Ishe Oluwa kole bajeo. Kole bajeo, kole bajeo, Ishe Olua
Running African, reuniting the African family for development.
It is Running African. And we're talking about Kwanzaa in this segment of the program, playing some of those very special Kwanzaa songs, but also to remind you that today we are, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, the Nguza Saba. We're going to go through that through song, through music in a little while. But today, of course, it's self-determination, Kugichagulia, defining ourselves, naming ourselves, creating for ourselves, and speaking for ourselves. Say that to your family this morning. Kugichagulia.
Umoja, unity. Kugichagulia, self-determination. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. Ujamaa, cooperative economics. Nia, purpose. Kuumba, creativity. Imani, faith. These are the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. Come celebrate with us.
Running African, reuniting the African family for development. Adopted as the anthem of the African National Congress in 1925, this has become the anthem of people of African descent throughout the world.
Kosisikele Afrika, malupaka misu pangolwayo, yizwa imitandazo yetu, kosisikele Latina, lusapolwayo, kosisikele Afrika, malupaka misu pangolwayo, yizwa imitandazo yetu, kosisikele Latina, lusapolwayo, kosisikele, 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 woza boya, oyi si chabasa esu Ufedi seti twali maswenye ho Morena buluka si chabasa esu Ufedi seti twali maswenye ho
Usibuluke Usibuluke morena
Usibuluke si chabasa Esu si chabasa Africa Magu Benjalo Gude gubengula pagate Gude gubengula pagate Magu Benjalo Gude gubengula pagate Gude gubengula pagate We are the slave descendants from the African race. The African race. The African race. We are the slave descendants from the African race. We're proud, it's no disgrace. Our forefathers were taken away. Taken away. Taken away. They were bound in ships and shackled all the way, like baggage and brought to the West. They swap my brother now, also my sister too, for a drink of wine so they could drink and be merry, so they could drink and be merry. I speak Amharic, my sister speaks Swahili. They put us all together now, that's why we can't understand. That's why we can't understand. We are the slave descendants from the African race. The African race. The African race. We are the slave descendants from the African race. We're proud, it's no disgrace. We're proud of the African race. We're proud, it's no disgrace. We're proud of the African race. We're proud, it's no disgrace. We're proud of the African race. Moja, unity that brings us together. Umoja, unity that brings us together. Umoja, unity that brings us together. Kugichagulia, Kugichagulia, we will determine Kugichagulia. We will determine who we are. We will determine who we are. Ujima, working and building a union. Ujima, working and building a union. Ujima, working and building a union. Ujama, we'll spend our money wisely. Ujama, we'll spend our money wisely. Ujama, we'll spend our money wisely. We know the purpose of our lives. We know the purpose of our lives. We know the purpose of our lives. Kumba, all that we touch is more beautiful. Kumba, all that we touch is more beautiful. Kumba, all that we touch is more beautiful.
African, reuniting the African family for development.
Celebration of Kwanzaa was created in 1965 by our brother Maulana Karinga. Started in the United States, within the African American community, of course. Kwanzaa, from the Swahili phrase Matunda ya Kwanza, which means the first fruits of the harvest. So we're out of our Christmas celebration and we are within our own African-centered celebrations of Kwanzaa. With meaning, with purpose, the 7 principles, the Nguzo Saba, gives us a guide as to how to treat each day of the Kwanzaa celebrations, what to focus on, and I think it really does make a lot of sense. So today we're focusing on self-determination. The Swahili word is Kugichagulia. We're focusing on defining ourselves. We're focusing on naming ourselves. We're focusing on creating for ourselves and speaking for ourselves as African people. Tomorrow it will be Ujima, collective work and responsibility. And the focus then will be to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together. So these 7 principles, you've been hearing them in song, and I've been reiterating some of them, especially Kugichagulia this morning, because today is the focus, self-determination. Tomorrow it's collective work and responsibility. Collective work and responsibility. So if we take these principles seriously, think of how much we can achieve over a 7-day period right after Christmas within our community. Let's try now. One of the things that we know is that Kwanzaa, in terms of the rituals, have not necessarily caught on in Jamaica in the way that I'm sure many had hoped it would. Because the rituals, I think, are performed only in a few homes in Jamaica. But let us start somewhere. Let us start with the principles that guide each day. Even if you're not going to be doing the rituals of lighting the candles and having the mats, etc. Maybe if we start with the focus on the Nguzo Saba, the principles, using one principle each day of Kwanzaa to guide how we behave, how we operate, how we interact with each other. Maybe that's a good enough place to start. And really, it is never too late to start. So what do we do today? What do we do today? Kugichagulia. Let's define ourselves now. Let us name ourselves. Let us speak for ourselves. It takes a bit of introspection. It takes a bit of reflection. It takes a bit of going within ourselves a quiet moment to define ourselves. I find that with each year, for the process of definition is a continuous process. So the more you know, and the more you understand how you know what you know, so that you can throw out what doesn't suit you, what's coming from an imperialistic white supremacist perspective. You got to throw that out, you know, in the process of definition. So how do you know what you know? Where did you get that from? The knowledge about yourself. So the knowing in defining ourselves is very, very important. So let us talk about how we know what we know about ourselves, about Africa. Ask Mr. Franklin Johnson, because what they're teaching our children in schools, we're going to have to empty their minds out in the best way possible. Deprogram entire generations of people in Jamaica, African people. The deprogramming is important. And if we can come to that place ourselves through the process of reflection, even as we go into 2016, it's even better. But let us help each other through conversation, after reflection, through that process of defining ourselves. What do you know about your people? What do you know about Africa? How do you see Africa? What do you know about God? When you close your eyes to pray, do you see a white Jesus? Do you see a white God? And how come? Because you're going to have to deprogram your mind. And believe me, that's the hardest one to do. Been there, done that. It's one of the hardest ones to do, to close your eyes, to pray, and to visualize God and not find him white. We have to redefine ourselves. Close your eyes. Go ahead. Go ahead. Close your eyes. Go ahead. Close your eyes. Visualize Jesus. All right. Visualize God now. What do you see? Who do you see? You know how serious it is, the programming of the African mind by white imperialism and supremacy, that even when the staunchest of Christian and those prayer warriors tell you, that they dream, and they dream about angels, and they dream of Jesus, and they dream of the presence of God. Ask them, what color, what skin shade were the angels and Jesus? They may not want to answer, but if they answer white, rebuke them in the name of Jesus. So today, Kugichagulia, is a serious day in the Kwanzaa celebrations. We are beginning to define ourselves. But how do we do that? What does that entail? What does that include? How do we define ourselves? Many among us define themselves as global citizens, maybe because it's too painful to be African. The process to be African is too painful for many of us. And so that even those who are the most enlightened in so many other ways among us prefer to identify themselves as global citizens. Why? It's easier to do. Because there is no contradiction between being an African and being a global citizen. No contradiction. So go ahead and be a global citizen. But who are you? Who are you? And many of us choose to identify as Anglo-Saxons because my father came from Liverpool, and his father before that was from Ireland or Scotland. Oh no, but I've got a lot of Indian in my blood. It's easier to do, it's safer to do, but is that how we're going to define ourselves? Is that enough? So the process of defining ourselves in terms of who we are, because the process of definition is wider than just who we are, because why we are in terms of our purpose is also part of that definitive process. But we got to get to who we are before we determine, or we can even begin to determine why we are. Sometimes we have to take that very same path of confusion to find ourselves. And if this path of confusion came through Christianity, Eurocentric Christianity, or Turkish Islam, then it's a long and winding and rough road to travel. But we got to go back and fetch it. We got to go back and fetch it. We have got to go back and fetch ourselves from the clutches of Eurocentrism, from the clutches of Eurocentric Christianity, from the clutches of Turkish Islam, from the clutches of white imperialism, from the clutches of white supremacy, and begin to define ourselves, love ourselves. Because if we do not do that, we can't love our hair. We can't love our hair. So our children will have to, we will oversee that process of our children putting in damaging chemicals in their hair. We will oversee that. We will oversee the process of our children straightening their hair because their natural God-given hair too tough, too rough. It's as simple as that. So we must first go back and fetch it. We must go back and fetch our spirituality. We must go back and fetch our God, because our God is ourselves. Once we find ourselves, we find our God. Once we find our God, we find ourselves. Believe me, we must go back and fetch it. Sankofa. Because if we do not do that, the amount of bleaching products that's on the market in Jamaica, and it was a lot before China came in. It was a lot before China came in. And remember, China is actively engaged now in Jamaica. And bleaching in China is worse than anywhere else in the world. Because racism seemed to have been born and bred in China. And I do not say that lightly. So the bleaching products that's flooding our markets, and let me just say this one thing to our government agencies that are going one by one to Chinese shops to and to search through luggage of China in Jamaica. That's not going to stop it, you know. That is not going to stop it. It's not going to stop it. Mr. Franklin Johnson must understand that little girl who spoke to him about Africans selling Africans into slavery, that he did not correct, who he did not correct, that if we do not correct our children and nurture them at that age, they will find the bleaching product on the other end. It is a process. Just like you can't kill an idea. Once the idea of inferiority is placed in the vulnerable minds of our babies, once we tell them it is not important to be African, it is not important to be black, once we tell them you're a global citizen and you're here to serve the tourist and tourism, because that's a big thing in our schools now, the tourism courses, and that the tourist must be respected at all costs. Have you seen the creed that they're teaching your children in school about tourism? Have you looked at that? And remember, there are no black tourists in Jamaica. So if you've come in as a tourist and you're black and you're listening to this program, you really aren't a tourist. In the psyche of the Jamaican, the tourist is always white. We must define ourselves. Let's use today, because we're talking about defining ourselves, naming ourselves, creating for ourselves, and speaking for ourselves. I'm going to break that up in 15 different pieces. I am patient. Let us define ourselves. I am convinced, even though I'm hopeful, that the state that we find ourselves in as African people in Jamaica, that it is too much to ask the African in Jamaica today to do all of that in even a month. Define yourself, name yourself, create for yourself, and speak for yourself. That's a process. So I am stripping Kugichagulia down to the bone, and say, today we define ourselves. Today we define ourselves. Today we define ourselves. Not by titles, Rastafarian, Pan-African, African-centered, Christian, etc., etc. Not by titles, but by who we are. Who am I? Let us forget the titles, the doctors and the professors and the lawyers. Not by what we have studied, not by the title that we've gained through study, not by accolades, the amount of awards that we have won. Spiritually and racially, who am I? hear about the black nativity scene that there was a mayor, I put this up on my Facebook page also, a mayor in Australia who put up a black nativity scene of a black baby Jesus. And the backlash that mayor is getting is out of this world. They are demonizing that mayor on the social media and everywhere else. How dare you? They have said to her. I mean, hundreds of people are mad that the mayor in Australia dared to put in her nativity scene a black baby Jesus. Jesus is not black, they say. How dare you? This is blasphemy. And they have cussed her out in no simple way. Then if it doesn't matter, if the color of his skin don't matter, why the uproar about the black baby Jesus? Why the uproar if the color of his skin don't matter? If the color of his skin don't matter, why is Jesus white? To my brother Archangel on Facebook too. Thank you so much, my brother. Thank you so much. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to another segment of the program as we look back to go forward. Sankofa, reuniting the African family for development. Blazing new paths towards Africa's rendezvous of destiny. Bearing witness, demanding change. Crafting an African-centered agenda for change and development. Being the change we want to see. Honoring my moral obligation to remember. Professor Ivan Van Sertima reminds us that whether something happened 10,000 years ago or 10 years ago, it occupies the very same space, time and space, in our consciousness once we've become aware of it. I want to say a very special Kugichagulia to Nana Erna Brodba, Nana Nzinga Asata, one of the things that we have been unable to do as a group, as a nation, and even with the global community getting on this is freedom for Mumia Abu-Jamal. Assata Shakur herself is now under threat since the thawing of relations between Cuba and the United States. There have been numerous calls for our sister Assata Shakur, who has been in exile in Cuba for many decades now, to be extradited for crimes she did not commit, but for which she was framed, to be extradited to the United States. There have been numerous calls for that, and I can imagine the pressure that has been put on the Cuban government behind the scenes, because that, nothing but her blood will appease white imperialism and white supremacy. So Asata herself has been coming up against that. A strong sister who is in exile in Cuba. But this appeal she made many, many moons ago for freedom for Mumia Abu Jamal, who himself has been falsely imprisoned. Mumia is now very ill, has been for a while, developed diabetes in prison, went into diabetic shock a few months ago, near death, and got no medical attention until the African American community made loud noises. Then he got late medical attention. Now Mumia testified just last week, I think it was, about the lack of medical care. Because one of the things that they do not want to create a martyr of Mumia, you see, and that is why he has not been executed, I think. Well, obviously there has been a groundswell, and there was really a serious movement for the freedom of Mumia Abu Jamal and for that execution to be lifted from his head. And it has been. So it's been commuted many moons now to life in prison. You do remember that Mumia is a brother-in-law of Dr. Barashango. Do you remember Dr. Barashango, who did so much research on Africans as peoples of the Bible? He's been on this program many, many moons, many times. He passed, he transcended while he was jogging a few years ago. His wife is Mumia's sister. Mumia is a journalist, a broadcaster, who spoke out against injustice, who spoke out against oppression, who spoke out against white imperialism, and who did more than speak, but got in the grassroots, saying to African people, you must be independent, you must be self-sufficient. We must do more for our race, for ourselves. And so he was framed, and for the murder of a police officer, and he's been in prison for all these years. The entire world, including Europeans, France and Spain and Germany and other parts of Europe, stood up with the African American community and black people everywhere. We did also here in Jamaica on behalf of Mumia Abu Jamal. He was taken off death row. He's serving a life sentence. He's very ill, and so he testified last week about that illness. And one of the things that he said that really got me, he talked about the itching of his skin as a result of the illness, and that he scratched until his skin is covered in blood. And yet they say they won't give him the medical attention he needs because his illness is not serious enough. So it is execution by medical neglect that's happening now with Mumia Abu Jamal. We've covered a lot, I think, over the last few months, the last year actually, and want to look back to go forward on some of the issues quickly that we covered. One, of course, had to do with the shoreline, the beaches in Jamaica. But before that, this.
The essence of power is the ability to define someone's reality and have them live according to that definition as though it is a definition of their own choosing.
Run
bottom line is that we're not allowed to swim on any beach we want to here in Jamaica. Contextualizing this song by Brian and Tony Gold. This song was about apartheid South Africa. Apartheid South Africa. But it has become the anthem on this program as we seek to liberate the beaches in Jamaica for the people of Jamaica. We're living in an uncaring system, uncaring, unfeeling, delusional also, heartless, cold, and I dare say murderous. Because at the end of the day, when you deny the masses of the people so much for so long, what in heaven's name do you expect to reap from this exclusion, from this oppression? What in the name of everything that is good and everything that is honest and truthful? What in the name of our ancestors do you expect from the people? Do you not expect that the people will at some point rise up against the oppression? Do you not expect that? Or you think mankind as a herd of cattle in a closed enclosure? So we have a job to do in liberating Jamaica's beaches. Last year, the government announced that they were going to be renovating and rehabilitating beaches across Jamaica and that facilities will be put in place and so on. We welcomed that move. We don't see much happening in that regard, but we welcomed the move at the time. And one of the things we said, we'll give them time to do that. So we heard about beaches in Portland, beaches in St. Mary, well, from pillar to post, from Negril Point to Morant Point. In the meantime, because that in itself is turning out to be smoke and mirrors. You know, these people are magicians. Now you see it, now you don't. And they make announcements, grand announcements. We call them and we talk about it. We follow up. We follow up because we must follow up. So one of my main focus going through into next year, it's gonna have to be the beaches. I don't think that we got anywhere. There were a lot of conversations. We liberated the beach along with the Minister's Fraternal at Little Duns River. There are other beaches that we liberated privately because we had to remove, stuff. But a lot happened in terms of the sale of Jamaica's coastline. And a lot continues to happen in terms of that. So that the government of Jamaica is still selling the coastline, but something else wicked, something very wicked is happening in the island. And Bert Samuels, my brother Bert Samuels, wrote about that recently. I interviewed him about that also. It was published in one of the newspapers, where he made a reference to what was happening with the beaches. And I think for us, this is a critical point that he raised here, because we've been talking about the beaches for the longest time. One of the things that we've always said, and we've had so many experts coming into the studio to tell us what the laws are regarding the beaches. And it turned out, my understanding, simply put, is that the only way you can access the beaches, because the beaches cannot be sold, cannot be privatized, cannot be taken from the people. But what happened? You can sell the land around the beaches, and those who buy the lands are not mandated, whether by law or morals, to make access, make a pathway, as they do in Cuba, for example, and as they do in Barbados, make a pathway for the people to access the water. No, they build high walls and thick walls and put barbed wires on top of those walls in some cases. So the people are being denied access to Jamaica's coastline from Negril Point to Morant Point. And the access is granted only to tourists. And remember, we have already defined tourists. So when we say tourists, just know that it is within the definition of tourism here in Jamaica, which means it's only white people. So as Bert Samuels pointed out in his piece, one, you can't even, for a lot of these all-inclusive hotels, you can't even book online. You can't even walk in and book. You can't go in and book. You have to book online, which means that you book online, you pay with a credit card, and that money stays in Florida or New York or wherever the head office is, or Spain or Portugal or Netherlands or Mexico, you name it. So they tell us about tourism, and they tell us, how much this is helping the economy. One of the worst things that could have happened to us is tourism, in the way that we practice tourism here in Jamaica. So as we go into 2016, we have to look at that again. But we really do need people in the ministry and so on who are thinking at a different level. And because they are not thinking at a different level of heritage tourism and eco-tourism and so on, we're going to have to think at that level, and we're going to have to make the changes. There are many ways to do this, There are many ways to do this. We'll look at some of those when we go into 2016. So the very wicked thing that is being done now. So those private entities, usually foreigners, and this is no xenophobia, it is speaking the truth as I see it. These private multinational corporations have bought land on the coastline, and they build massive structures. I don't know where they're sending the waste. No, we know where they're sending the waste. That's another thing that we're focusing on too as we look at the waste. Where is that waste going? But yeah, where are they sending the waste, by the way? Where they're selling all of that sewage. So they buy the land and they build these high walls, and there's no access for us. But we have always known that if we really wanted change, we could all of us rent a boat, or the little boats, the little fisherman boat them, and we could come in from the sea. And as long as we could access that shoreline, that high water mark there, and so on, it's a whole heap of thing. But anyway, we could have come in from the sea and invaded these beaches. Yes, we can. And when we say invade, we mean invade, because they're our beaches anyway, but because they have been hijacked, we're going to have to invade. But understanding now that they're building what they're calling, and Bert Samuels pointed this out to us, protective reefs, protective barriers, blocking the waterway, the entrance by boat to the beach. So that if it's a strategy to keep us out by any means necessary. In that case, we must go in by any means necessary. So how many of us, and this is one strategy that we can talk about publicly, how many of us are willing to get ourselves in some fishermen boats and access all, and I mean all, 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3, those beaches? We're going to have to stand for something, even if we're sitting down. So we have this problem that still exists. It's getting worse because those who we have entrusted to hold the beach for us and our children and their children until such time, they are selling the beaches because they are greedy and because they lack vision and knowledge and a heart. I am no longer surprised by anything that civil servants, public servants in government institutions do. I'm talking like mayors and councillors and so on. What you call them? Politicians. I'm not surprised. We expect too much from them. They don't have the capacity to do any more. They have the capacity to do less. Because they are the ones that we talk about, right? When we talk about the job of colonialism and imperialism is now being carried out by people in black skins. So they are hypnotized permanently. We do not expect anything from them. If there's going to be change, I'm going to have to be the change. So as we go into 2016, the issue of the beach remains top of the agenda. Access, inclusion.
Stay out late at night when you want to. Are there no signs in town saying we want no blacks around? You must be living as the paradise.
Brother Warren Johnson on Twitter says it is our apartheid state. And that's well said, my brother. Apartheid in Jamaica, our apartheid state. Their apartheid state.
Stay up late at night if you want to. Are there no signs around? He want no blacks in town. You must be living in paradise. She said that she was sorry things were going right, and that my neighbor's dog was disturbing me at night. But that I didn't get the raise I pay I'd been wanting from the other day. But if there was a possibility, she'd gladly swap her place with me. Can you swim on any beach you want to? She asked again. Can you stay out late at night when you want to?
What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself, and what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself, and what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told.
right, a note from Asta Black saying, good morning, Sister Jabu. It's Kabu, Asta, K-A-B-U. All right, he says the Rastafari Economic Development iFriends went well and was well supported. Next iFriends will be at Baba Roots factory in Darlaston, and that will be on January 30, 2016. All right, and thank you. He says, okay, good to know. It went well. Really wanted to be there, Asta, but you emphatically told me that I wasn't welcomed in your own way. It is a Rastafari iFriends, and I do not identify as such, so I didn't come. But so the next one is going to be on January 30 in Darlaston, and I'm sure you'll keep us informed on that, and we will be very willing to announce. Well, I don't know how many of you have been reading the Guardian newspaper, the UK Guardian newspaper, but on the 24th, or was it on the 25th, there's an article in the UK Guardian entitled Beijing Highway, $600 million road, just the start of China's investments in the Caribbean. I wonder if I can read some of it. Let me see if I can read some of this. It says, stretching some 67 kilometers, 41.6 miles north to south across Jamaica, the 600 million four-lane highway skirts around a mountain and will eventually be lined with luxury hotels, restaurants, and bars. Nicknamed the Beijing Highway, after the Jamaica sprinter Usain Bolt reportedly turned down a chance for the road to carry his name, the state-of-the-art tolled carriageway is the most striking sign that the Chinese treasure ship has arrived in the Caribbean. Did Usain really turn it down, or was there a lot of uproar about it? Anyway, the article continues. The red and gold flag of the People's Republic flutters over the construction site, that is in Jamaica, where hundreds of Chinese workers reside in camps and trucks are lined up in military precision. When completed early next year, the tolled highway, paid for by Beijing, will cut driving times from Kingston to the tourist resort of Outer on the north coast from nearly 2 hours to 50 minutes. What a price to pay for an hour and a half. What would you pay to get to your destination an hour earlier? That's a question we must ask of the government of Jamaica. Anyway, the article continues. It is the single biggest investment by the Chinese in the Caribbean. In return for expertise and investment, the Jamaican government has handed over 1,200 acres of land around the road to the Chinese. So let's read it again. In return for expertise and investment, the Jamaican government has handed over 1,200 acres of land around the road to the Chinese, who plan to build 3 luxury hotels with 2,400 rooms. I am putting up my own hand to ask myself a question. So please may I ask a question? Where is all that water going to come from? That area that this project is earmarked for is a watershed area. All right, the article continues. In a country in the grip of austerity imposed by the International Monetary Fund, and where poverty has doubled since 2007, according to the Center for Economic Policy Research, the arrival of the Chinese is seen by many as the only hope. Jamaica has become the hub of a Chinese presence in the Caribbean and is now home to the regional offices of a state-owned Chinese harbor engineering company, Czech which is building the highway-linked road. The country's Prime Minister Portia Simpson has rejected warnings from trade unionists that the presence of the Chinese will do little to lift Jamaicans out of unemployment. But the government has not said how many local people will be employed on the project. You know, we the people can say, because we have examples in Angola, right across the continent of Africa, right in our own backyard in Antigua and in other Caribbean countries. We have examples of who benefits, where the workers come from, where the employment comes from when China invests, or so-called, we're not going to use that word lightly, you know, when China invades. The Joint Industrial Council, the article continues, a coalition of building and construction workers has said the government's claim that Chinese workers are only bought in to do advanced engineering work is egregious and misleading. And the Chinese are doing common laborers' work, which could be done by Jamaicans. Portia Simpson Miller condemns criticism, saying discussion of the issue will send the message, do not invest in Jamaica, to the Chinese. There are also concerns over the route. Simon Mitchell, professor of geology at the University of the West Indies, the article said the lack of transparency around the investment and the building project was worrying, and they quote Mitchell, "There's a big issue with the middle section of the road and what is going to happen when there's an earthquake. That part of the road crosses two faults. There are gigantic soil deposits sitting on top of them, and then the road is on top of all of that. There's real concern as to how stable it is. The government showed me the plans that the Chinese company used, and I'm still not convinced that the solution is safe." The Beijing Highway is currently the largest single investment by the Chinese in the Caribbean.
20-year-old Giovanni Martin of Waterworks, Savannah Lamar, Westmoreland, died from injuries sustained in an accident along the Waterworks main road last evening. The Withorn police report that about 8 p.m., Martin was driving a motorcycle when he attempted to overtake a line of traffic. He collided with a JDF service vehicle, which was being driven in the opposite direction. He was assisted to hospital, where he died. The 184th anniversary of the Christmas Rebellion, which was led by national hero Samuel Sharp, will be celebrated and reenacted today, December 27, in Tulla Castle, Kensington, St. James. Sam Sharp, a slave and a deacon in the Baptist Church, was the protagonist of the 1831 Slave Rebellion, which began in the Kensington estate and which was largely instrumental in bringing about the abolition of the slavery in Jamaica and the Caribbean. Calvin Brown, spokesperson for the South St. James Social and Economic Trust, organizer of the event, says the day will start with a torch run from Catadupa, the birthplace of Sam Sharp. It will proceed on to Sam Sharp Square, Montego Bay, and then to the Kensington Historical Site. The annual celebration, dubbed the Flames of Freedom, serves to highlight the significance of the rebellion and the role Sam Sharp played in the abolition of slavery. The rebellion is credited for influencing the push for full emancipation of slaves, which came on August 1, 1838. 2 years later, the British Parliament passed the abolition bill, and 4 years later slavery was abolished. Meantime, more than 250 young people from churches and youth organizations in St. James are set to participate in the 100-kilometer Flames of Freedom torch run. The annual event is part of activities to commemorate the anniversary of the 1831 Christmas Rebellion led by Sam Sharp. In news overseas, 8 people are reported to have been killed in Texas in new tornadoes, raising the death toll to 26 in a week of storms in several U.S. states. 5 people died when their cars were reportedly blown off a motorway in Garland near Dallas. Another 3 bodies were found in nearby towns. Officials also say Texas and Oklahoma could suffer a historic blizzard, bringing up to 16 inches of snow. The storms across the south have been unusually powerful for winter. Reports from Texas said churches were destroyed, cars mangled, and trees toppled across a wide area. Finally, the owner of a gypsum mine in China's eastern Shandong province has killed himself as rescuers try to reach 17 miners who have been trapped for 2 days. One person died and 4 miners escaped when the mine collapsed on Friday. Since then, rescue workers have managed to pull a number of miners to safety and have drilled a hole to access some of the trapped workers and are trying to transfer food and water. China has a long history of industrial accidents. The latest incident comes days after a deadly landslide caused by construction waste in southern China. China's Xinhua news agency reports that Ma Kongbo, the chairman of the Yurong company which owns the mine, drowned himself by jumping into a mine well early on Sunday. His motive is not clear, but the BBC reports that the Chinese authorities have toughened the punishment of employers who are negligent.
The essence of power is the ability to define someone's reality and have them live according to that definition as though it is a definition of their own choosing.
Right, so we won't have any sports diary this morning. So we continue with this report in the Guardian newspaper, published on Friday. I think it was the 25th, and in the Guardian. If it wasn't Friday, it was on a Thursday. I think it might have been Friday. We printed it and didn't necessarily print the date. But all right. So it's entitled Beijing Highway, 600 million road, just the start of China's investment in the Caribbean. So China and Jamaica is important, because it's important for us to pay some attention to. That is, we must pay attention to it. There is nothing wrong when there is mutual investment, when persons who may be weaker at the negotiating table is able to leverage something, to some kind of a leverage. My feeling in reading all of what's happening, China's presence in Jamaica, is that we have come, the Jamaican government, from a very, very, very weak position and have found ourselves in a debtor's beggar's prison, and is asking China to bail us out, begging China to bail us out. In that regard, we have no leverage. Even though all the experts on Chino-African and Chino-Caribbean relations have said that the leverage that the Caribbean has is even more powerful if the Caribbean negotiates as a bloc, en bloc, CARICOM, with China, as opposed to these bilateral arrangements. They'll tell us that we don't know because we are not in the system, but we're critical thinkers. And how much are we willing to sacrifice to get to our destination 1 hour earlier? Is this what it is about? A highway that you give away our children's birthright and our land for a highway to get from Kingston to Oterias an hour earlier? Granted, the highway is really nice. China Hill, really pleasant to drive on. And so we have nothing in principle against that whole process. So it must be understood. What I am concerned about is how much did we give up to get here an hour earlier? Well, the article continues that during a visit to Beijing with her ministers earlier this year, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Portia Simpson Miller, announced a project which will dwarf the road in both size and cost. It involves the Chinese building a 1.5 billion deep water container port on islands in Jamaica, using dredging and land reclamation to accommodate mega ships coming through the expanded Panama Canal. But the islands, Goat Island and Little Goat Island, are internationally protected ecological sites, home to threatened species of birds, fish, and reptiles. Diana Macaulay of the Jamaica Environment Trust said the plan would involve the destruction of Goat Island, including wetlands, coral reefs, and the largest remaining area of intact dry limestone forest in Jamaica. It was being pursued, she said, with no discussion or transparency. The details of the port have never been released. No plans have been put forward publicly. We have had to use the access to information laws to get what details we have, she said. So this article was published in the Guardian newspaper, and it's our concern. She's continuing. So our concern is that this is an environmentally protected area. Its environmental importance was protected by law internationally and by the government of Jamaica. So to turn around and announce while in Beijing that this port was being planned before any discussions were held with anyone in the region makes a mockery of their environmental protection. They are just selling off our islands, not even perhaps to the highest bidder. The Chinese Harbour, the article continues, the Chinese Harbour Engineering Company, CHEC, did not respond to requests for a comment. Our responsibility as civil society, as citizens of Jamaica, is to ask questions. The questions are always more important than the answer, because you see, it is in our own questioning that we find what our purpose is in terms of our responsibility, what we need to do. So the questions, we must ask questions. Do not give me answers. The government of Jamaica, whether PNP or JLP, they are very good at devising solutions and then finding problems to fit them. And this is something we must know. As we go into 2016, what are the questions that we need to ask about China in Jamaica? What lessons can we learn from China in Africa, that whole relationship? What lessons can we learn from Ghana? What lessons can we learn from South Africa in particular? What lessons can we learn from Angola? What lessons can we learn from Sudan? What lessons can we learn from the army that is now being unleashed on Africa? What lessons can we learn about China's military presence in Africa? How can we leverage China-Jamaica relations? Is it too late? China says the Angola model, for example, is a win-win for China and a win for Africa. Many are questioning that. The very same model is being rolled out here in Jamaica, in particular, in the wider Caribbean generally. Is this a win-win for China, who's coming in with the money, and a win for Jamaica? Or is it a win-win-win-win-win for China? And a wait and let's see how the chips fall for Jamaica. There is some short-sightedness and that is an understatement, in Jamaica's negotiations with China. I've had some interviews with Minister Omar Davies. We have those interviews recorded. We're going to carry them this morning. I think we'll probably put them for another day. And especially against the background and within the context of his article in the Guardian, because the Guardian is, in a way, that article, and we hope that it is well researched, contradicting some of what we heard from Minister Davies. We're looking at China again in relation to the development at the Roaring River property. The heritage site is under threat. The water wheel is under threat. The construction of a highway that goes through the Roaring River property is also going through the birthplace of Mwalimu Marcus Messiah Garvey, of his parents and grandparents. We have heard nothing from the Minister of Culture. Minister Omar Davies has said that he would look into it. Nothing has been done. Our heritage, our history, our culture, ourselves being destroyed. And if we had gone, it's easy to say this to China Harbor, you know, that this site that you're digging through, pretend that Marzi Dong, or you know, was born there, and that this is a sacred site as a result. We must protect our sacred sites. And where Mwalimu Marcus Messiah Garvey grew up, was raised, where his parents were born, it's documented, this is not fabrication, it's in the records left by the Europeans. These are sacred sites. These are sacred sites. If we do not see them as such, it would explain why we're in the kinds of decadence that we've found ourselves in. So as we go into 2016, my commitment is to put more emphasis on, to be more focused, wearing blinkers on China in Jamaica and the sale of Jamaica by those who we have entrusted the land to. So we give away 1,200 acres for 2,400 hotel rooms and luxury condos and the rest of it. And then we push our people off and we call them squatters. There's something seriously wrong about how we're going about things. Why do we take it then? Why do we take it? What is our limit? At what point do we feel righteous indignation? At what point do we say no more, no more, no more like Chief Taki? At what point do we say no more like Paul Bogle? At what point do we say no more like Sam Sharp? At what point do we say no more? At what point? Amy G on Twitter commenting on this highway situation. She says it is so their trucks can move shipments quicker from Kingston to North Shore. Hashtag Goat Islands. Hashtag sellout. The Jamaican people have been sold again. And it's an interesting situation because we are not seeing the chains on the ankles and we're not seeing ourselves being paraded on the auction block. We do not conceive of the enslavement that we find ourselves in and that we have been re-enslaved by those who we have entrusted our freedoms to. And they would have us vote for them. How do we do this? The audit of the healthcare system found the healthcare system wanting. An audit of the justice system or this unjust justice system will find the justice system wanting, I guarantee you. An audit of the Constitution will find the Constitution lacking. An audit of governance and democracy in Jamaica will find that we're lacking in good governance and that democracy is only for the politicians. An audit of food supply, security, and social justice in Jamaica will find that we are sadly lacking. An audit of the private sector organization of Jamaica will find the private sector lacking. An audit of the Ministry of Land and the Ministry of Labor will find them sadly wanting. An audit of the Ministry of Culture should require the ministry to disband, dismantle, and rearrange itself. The Culture Minister, Lisa Hanna, must face the conflict of interest in the Pinnacle matter. She must. The Culture Minister must look at the National Heritage Trust and tell us, and after I've said this, I don't know what is going to happen, but she must tell us why we have a Jew as a head, as a chairman, and a Chinese as a director. Who represents the masses of the Jamaican people? She herself is an Indian. We're going to have to say what we're going to have to say, and we're going into 2016. Let the chips fall where they may. This great lack and want have been apportioned in great abundance upon the black masses of this country. The hunger and malnutrition index is so high. Even donation of blood, and we hear them calling for donation of blood, but even donation of blood may prove risky for would-be donors because of widespread poverty and stress. You call upon us to give blood. Where we going to get it from? Have you looked in the eyes of the Jamaican people and seen the white? Can you diagnose anemia from afar? Where you going to get that blood from? These are predicaments which affect the black masses of the Jamaican people. We won't talk about the crime this morning. To survive in the new year, what do? Do we put race first and try it this time? Race above party, race above religion, race above social differences. Let us try it this time. Can we come up with some simple, efficient, and practical socio-cultural methods to impact our situation as we go into a new year? One of the greatest issues facing us even as we go forward within the context of the IMF and China in Jamaica. Poverty, oppression, tribalism. Even as we look toward the 212th anniversary of the Haitian independence, true independence, defying and defeating the might of France, let us be inspired by the Haitian Revolution by Boukman and Dessalines. Jacob Carruthers, our elder ancestor, reminds us that the Haitian Revolution is important to the situation in which we find ourselves at this time. Although many of us are unaware of it, he says, we are in the midst of a war, perhaps the greatest intellectual conflict of the world.
The essence of power is the ability to define someone's reality and have them live according to that definition as though it is a definition of their own choosing.
Although many of us are unaware of it, we're in the midst of a war, perhaps the greatest intellectual conflict of world history. This is a war to liberate our historical and cultural memory from the most vicious intellectual assault ever perpetrated on humankind. It is a war to free the African mind. We must not and cannot continue to hold on to the phantom of liberty.
saying that those organizations which are politically on the front lines fighting for our people should come together and form a united front. This united front is a very simple thing now, a very simple task. All it means is that we come together and have common meetings. And if we hear one attacking the other newspaper, we don't respond to the newspaper, we telephone each other.
Got to find a solution to this pollution. Yeah. Got to find a solution to this pollution. Oh, gotta find a solution to this pollution. The poor man I feel that war. The poor man I feel that yeah. The poor man I feel that war. The poor man feel that yeah. Gas gone up, bus fare gone up, rent gone up, phone bill gone up, light bill gone up, tax gone up, car parks gone up. And we can't take this fuss, Lord. And there has got to be a solution to this pollution. Yeah, gotta find a solution to this pollution. The growing, gotta find a solution to this pollution. Whoa, 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 whoa. Gotta find a solution to this pollution. Only the poor man I feel, yeah. The poor man I feel, oh, the poor man feels, I know. Only him feels, yeah. Time gone up, skillion gone up, onion gone up, red peas gone up, black pepper gone up, chicken gone up, and the parents them angry, 'cause the people them hungry, and there has got to be a solution to this your pollution right now. Yeah. Got to find a solution to this pollution. Promises won't help. You got to find a solution to this pollution. We've been waiting for a solution to this pollution. Only the poor man I feel it, yeah. Only
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
Got to find a solution to this pollution. Oh, oh, oh. Got to find a solution to this pollution. Yeah. Got to find a solution to this pollution. Oh, got to find a solution to this pollution. The poor man I feel that war. The poor man I feel that yeah. The poor man I feel that war. The poor man feel.
Gotta find a solution to the IMF.
Gas gone up, bus fare gone up, rent gone up, phone bill gone up.
Gotta find a solution to the corruption. Gotta find a solution to the pollution.
Car parks gone up.
We gotta take our country back. Gotta take our country back from those who would destroy us.
Gotta find a solution.
From those who would suck our bloods like vampire.
Gotta find a solution.
Gotta take our country back from those who bleed us dry. Gotta find a solution. Gotta find a solution. Have you been listening? Have you been listening to what the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and all those Bretton Woods institutions, have you been listening to what they've been saying? Public sector workers, have you been listening? Teachers, doctors, policemen, civil servants, have you been listening? They say we must. They say Jamaica has to cut. They say Jamaica has to cut the public sector wage bill. How will they be able to do that? What is going to be done in 2016? We must ask questions. We must ask questions. We must find a solution. The solution is in the questioning. Let's ask the questions. Let's ask the questions. Got to answer them ourselves too. Lady called me last week, one of the last calls we took last week. She says, I have 3 questions. She asked all 3 of them. And just as I was going to throw it to my guest in the studio, she said, I will answer them. Social media at Kevoy Stevens, he says, it's the worst I've ever seen in Jamaica. He says, I'm just 20 years old and it's the worst I've ever seen. Hashtag Beggars Paradise. Kevoy, we gotta find a solution. You're the youth, my brother. The solution is gonna have to be in your hands. Call upon the young people to rise up. Rise up and do something. Rise up and be somebody. Rise up and say something.
Only the poor man I feel it every time. Only the poor man feel it, yeah. Only the poor man I feel it.
Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose tells lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory.
Must rise to bear this cross alone, and all the heathens go free. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. Must rise to live in misery and heathens in luxury. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. It's coming to tear down the walls of down pressure. Drive away transgression, clean up corruption, rule equality. Must righteous live in pain and always put to shame. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. Must they be found guilty and always get the blame? Just say no. Just say no. Father, say no. Just say no. He's gonna tear down the walls of down pressure, drive away transgression, clean up the corruption, set the captives free. He will not give I and I more than I can bear. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. He will not make Lucifer get your soul to smear. Just say no. My Father say no. Just say no. He man go tear down the walls of Babylon, clean up the corruption, drive away transgression, rule equality. He will not make I dash I foot against the stone. Just say no. Just say no. Father say no. Just say no. No form of destruction won't crumble my bones. Just say no. My Father say no. Just say no. He ma go tear Father say no. Just say no. He ma go tear down the walls of Babylon, eliminate Satan, clean up corruption, rule equality. So I will not bear this cross alone, and all the world go free. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no. I will not stay poor, living in poverty. Just say no. My Father say no. Just say no. He ma come clean up corruption, drive away transgression, tear down Babylon, set the captives free. Set them free. Clean it up. On time. Set the captives free. Just say no. Set the captives free. Tear down Babylon. Clean up corruption. Drive away transgression. Set the
Black
captives
power! Black 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 power, black power, black power.
I'm recruiting soldiers for Jah-Army. Recruiting soldiers. Jah time is now. Jah time is now. Satan forces, they all rise up to fight. They all rise up to fight. Jah and the saints, I say, only to fight. Jah and his saints. See them fighting against Jah children. See them slaughter them like slaves. Hear them come say, Jah is dead, but they didn't show me his grave. No, no. So I'm recruiting soldiers for Jah-Army. Recruiting soldiers. Jah time is now. Antichrist forces, they all rise up to fight against Jah and his saints. I can tell you, only to fight against Jah and the saints. But there is confusion in high places about the lamb that was slain. And all these years I hear them say they're building a nation, but all these tricks must just decay. So I'm recruiting soldiers for Jah-Army. Lightning soldiers. Jah time is now. Jah time is now. Lucifer forces, they all rise up to fight against Jah and his saints. But that won't work. Fight against Jah and his saints. Hear them praising old Marcus Garvey. Hear them exalting his name. Oh, it's great, yeah. But all these times they be doing that, I say. If he was here right now, he'd go to jail the same. Hey. Recruiting soldiers for Jah.
Are you ready, African people? Are you ready, African people? Are you ready, African people? Are you ready? Are we ready to make the change that we want to see? The change we spent the last year talking about? Are we ready, African people? Are we ready, African soldiers? Are we ready, African soldiers, to make the change?
Recruiting soldiers for Jah.
20 minutes now going up to 10 o'clock.
Jah time is now.
Reuniting the African family for development. Are we ready, African people? Are we ready to be the change that we want to see?
They all rise up to fight.
Are we ready to deprogram ourselves, define ourselves as who we are, and take our country back? Are we ready?
See them fighting against Jah children. See them slaughter them like slaves.
We were up on the anniversary of the Emancipation Wars of 1831-32. Led by Baba Sam Sharp and Overstrong, and not so strong physically men, but strong of mind and women. We're in the season where Jamaican Africans on the island decided 1831-32, we will no longer be a slave. Before we be a slave, we'd rather die and be in our grave. They said that to themselves. 1831-32. The result of that was emancipation from enslavement. Are we ready, African people? How much longer are we going to be slaves, enslaved, oppressed, depressed, repressed, excluded, trampled upon, stepped upon, ignored? How are we going to change our situation? Let's start this conversation rolling today by defining ourselves. Let us define ourselves if we haven't yet defined ourselves. And if we have defined ourselves, let's define our purpose. Let us name ourselves and define our purpose. We're under attack, and as my brother Profi says, when we're under attack, we're left with no alternative but to defend. We're a peaceful people, but we gotta defend. We gotta defend. We're recruiting soldiers.
Oh, it's great, yeah. But all these times, they be doing that, I say. If he was here right now, he'd go to jail the same. Hey. Recruiting soldiers for Jami. Recruiting soldiers for my father's army. Recruiting soldiers, your time is now. Satan forces, they all rise up, only to fight, fighting a losing battle, but they fight.
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
Gonna change the vibe a little. Just want to acknowledge my ancestors. Nama, Nebka, Zosa, Senefru, Kufu, Kafre, Sahuru, Pepe the First, Pepe the Second, Mentuhotep, Senusret, Sibek Neferu, Amosi, Amenhotep the First, Tutmose, Hatshepsut, Tutmose the Third, Akhenaten, Queen Tai, Amenhotep the Third, Nefertiti, Tutankhamen, Horemheb, Ramses the First, Setai the First, Ramses the Second, Ramses the Third, Shabaka, Taharka, Hannibal, Makeda, Tenkamenin, Mansa Kankan Musa, Askia Toure, Afonso the First, Idris Aluma, Nzinga, Amina, Ose Tutu, Nandi, Mosho Sho, Shaka Zulu, Kama, Jaja, Samore Toure, Behanzin Hosu Bawele, Menelik II, Ya Asantua, His Imperial Majesty, the Emperor, Haile Selassie the First.
How excellent is thy name, thou hast set thy glory above the heavens. For out out of the mouths of babes and suckles are the audience strength to still enemies and the avenger. With thy new name, O Jah Rastafari.
Here we go. Right after this, we're going out with Pafai with I Pledge Allegiance. So let's do this, and then we go to Pafai. Walk good. Tell them other one howdy. We will not be slaves. We will not be enslaved. We go through going into another year as free men and women. We understand freedom. See you next week, inshallah.
Black power, black power, black power, black power. power, black 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 power.
We pledge allegiance to the lion, the one who reigned from Mount Zion. We pledge allegiance to the lion, the one who reigned from Mount Zion. 'Cause the lion of Judah reigneth over land and sea, reigneth for eternity, reigneth over land and sea, reigneth for eternity. 'Cause the lion of Judah reigns. Eli, Eli, chant and shout. Let them know what we are chanting about. Eli, Eli, chant and shout. Let them know what we are all about. 'Cause the lion of Judah reigns. We pledge allegiance to the lion, the one who reigned from Mount Zion. We pledge allegiance to the lion, the one who reigned from Mount Zion. 'Cause the lion of Judah reigns. Hail him over land and sea. Lagos are you keep Ethiopia free. Hail him for eternity. Lagos are you keep Ethiopia free. 'Cause the lion